Welcome to all listeners, and thank you for joining this exciting session called The Edge of Ransomware, How Plymouth Poultry Recovered Within Hours. My name is Murthy Mithiprakasam. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Rubrik. And my guest today is Rama Aramulam, IT Manager at Plymouth Poultry. Thank you very much for joining me today, Rama.
Thanks, Murthy, for the introduction. And I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank the folks at Rubrik for putting this panel together, since it's such an important topic. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. And, we're really appreciative of you joining us today. So let's just start with, for folks who may not be familiar with Plymouth Poultry, can you just give us a quick overview of your business and then also your role within the company as well?
Sure. We are a meat protein distributing company. And we serve retail groceries and food service distributors who sell it to restaurants. We move about 200 million pounds of meat per year. And we operate pretty much 24/7. And my role at Plymouth as an IT manager is to oversee our infrastructure. That includes our backup and restore strategy.
Well, fantastic. Well, obviously, one of the reasons we have you on here is the fact that I think you recently went through a ransomware attack. So first, I want to congratulate you on successfully surviving that attack. I know it wasn't easy. Hopefully, it was made a little bit easier, by using Rubrik. So hopefully, we can kind of dig into that. But just before we get into everything, can you just give us a quick overview of the attack that you faced?
Sure. We were fully automated, and we heavily relied on our ERP and WMS systems. We didn't have a clear business continuity plan when our systems were compromised. So we were flying blind and had to rely on notes from our email communications and handwritten notes to service our customers during this outage. Everyone in the company was involved, including our CEO, who was picking orders in the freezer. This incident definitely highlighted our gaps. Keep in mind, we did have our perimeter firewalls. There was no publicly facing RDP servers. We patched our servers and all of our systems regularly. We had monitoring tools. We were managing data input and export by scanning for malicious contents. We had antivirus, anti-malware software for endpoints. And for our email security, we were using third-party vendors, vendor who does advanced threat protection, spam filtering, virus scanning, DOS attacks, email spoofing, etc. And we were monthly patching all of our systems, as I mentioned before. And we had multiple backups as well. And we even had a DR solution to sync to the cloud. So anyway, at first, it appeared to be an internal DNS issue. But upon further investigation, we came to quickly realize that our network was affected by ransomware. The root cause, based on our logs, was a temporary account that was set up to help with the transition of our company move from Seattle to Auburn. That had full admin privileges, and we were literally weeks away from removing that account. So any domain join Windows machine was compromised, and they all had to be shut down immediately and rebuilt from scratch. The next systems were spared. So basically, we were looking at a total rebuild of our entire domain, and we were actually infected by Ryuk.
Oh, that's quite significant. And, I think it's all the more impressive, and this is the reason we have you on today, is because, I see so many organizations that sort of approach these ransomware attacks from a posture of fear. And I was really impressed with how you and your organization were able to approach the situation from a position of confidence. And I know there were sort of technology pieces to that and process pieces to that. So maybe we can tackle each of those separately. So kind of first on the technology front, how do you think your backup and recovery architecture played a role in being able to recover from the attack very quickly?
Sure. Yeah, as I mentioned before, fortunately, we had multiple backups in place. Our DR solution that was set up to sync to the cloud was working, but since the management portal itself was Windows-based and domain-joined, we were unable to access our resources. That was a lesson learned. We then decided to proceed with our Rubrik backup appliance and start a restore process and after the races to get our backups, our restores as quickly as possible. Without a clear run book, we ran into several hiccups. So as you can imagine, we had to improvise and come up with a plan quickly and quickly on the fly to get the restores going. One of the key functionalities that I appreciated with Rubrik was the instant recovery. That definitely saved our time to cut down our RTO.
Very cool. We should come back to that point on instant recovery for sure. But I also want to cover on the process side of things as well, because obviously you've done a lot of planning and process already, but it seemed like you also, this experience helped your team learn about even further investments you could make in, run books, in cyber war game simulations. So can you talk a little bit about some of those learnings on the process side as well?
Sure, yeah. But from this experience, it was very clear that we weren't ready. And we knew that even before. That's something that we have been working on, but this incident definitely highlighted our gaps, including our existing DR plan. We have since then addressed those issues and added more security to our environment along with our DR plan. I'll talk about this more later. But of course, when it comes to DR solutions or backups, it's never complete, and it should be treated as such, and it should be treated like a living document that needs to be constantly updated. I have used many vendors over the years for backup solutions, and I'm not sure, having gone through what we went through, especially with this particular incident, whether we would have been able to restore successfully if it wasn't for Rubrik. So it's really important to research and put the right systems in place as you invest. Please keep in mind that I was skeptical initially when I first started using Rubrik, and I still think Rubrik could improve some of their GUI. However, in terms of functionality and reliability, I have nothing but praises.
Thank you very much. It's great to hear that, and it's great to hear you're able to put it to a real test. Let's talk a little bit more about the issue of preparedness, because what organization doesn't want to invest more, or doesn't think about investing more? So I think a lot of it is like understanding, what's the impact if you're not prepared. So since you haven't gone through this process, what are your thoughts on, what is the real impact of insufficient planning and preparedness for these kind of situations?
Well, I can only speak for what we went through. As I mentioned before, we didn't have a clear business continuity plan for both our business and IT. But fortunately, we were close to 75%, and we already had the right systems in place, which truly saved us. I say the right systems since this could have been a total disaster if we only relied on a backup that was hosted on a Windows platform and was domain joined, for example. Not to promote Rubrik or anything, but in this case, they really came through. The tech support was exceptional throughout our ordeal. In short, we all get caught in our day-to-day maintenances and emergencies. We tend to put backups and DR solutions in the back burner, but what we learned was to have a clear run book so we can minimize our RTO. In my case, I'm grateful that our management was willing to spend the money even before this incident. So we had the right systems in place, which really saved us from paying any sort of ransom, as you can imagine. We actually saved by spending ahead of time rather than after the fact. Yes, it was stressful, don't get me wrong. The stress was there, but it could have been a lot worse from all levels if that wasn't the case.
No, we were so glad that you were able to recover quickly, and that Rubrik was able to play a part in that. I want to come back to an earlier point you made, about Rubrik's technology. So obviously you're familiar with a lot of backup products, but Rubrik has this unique technology around instant recovery. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that played a role in helping to accelerate your recovery.
Definitely, yeah. Instant recovery definitely increased the amount of time it took to get our systems back up and running. One thing that I learned after the fact was that with instant recovery, we do need to migrate the systems off of Rubrik after a few days. The restored servers may experience sluggish performance, which is expected since it's not a high-end SAN. I had to learn that the hard way. And it's just something that I had to keep in mind and not treat Rubrik as a permanent placeholder for the servers after recovery, especially when you're restoring 30, 40, 50 servers. However, the instant recovery was truly a lifesaver and cut down our RTO tremendously.
I'm curious, that's a really interesting point that you were able to cut down your RTO using instant recovery. So usually there's a bit of a time gap when the ransomware attack happens for when the attacker actually kind of demands the ransom. So were you able to save yourself from having that ransom payment being demanded from you?
The short answer is yes. Please keep in mind that I was a bit skeptical, even though I had gone through the process of backing up and restoring all of our servers using Rubrik during our company move several months earlier. But after this incident, I'm pretty confident and comfortable in trusting Rubrik. In our case, we were infected by Ryuk, and even though we weren't contacted by anyone, we engaged a third-party forensics team to investigate immediately. And even in our case, because we had all these systems in place, it was as I mentioned, we run 24/7, so we immediately were notified, and we got on it right away. And the forensics team analyzed all the logs, compromised servers and data to make sure there was no data exfiltration. After weeks and months of analyzing all logs and data, we were given a clean bill of health. It was an exhausting process for sure, but yeah, Rubrik definitely, I was pretty confident.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's never an easy answer, but just to be able to have that confidence, hopefully that accelerated your RTO exactly like you said. So I mean, I am kind of curious. I'm sure the audience here was probably curious too. Like, roughly how long did it take you to get back up to kind of business as usual using Rubrik solutions?
Yeah, I would say about 24 to 48 hours plus. And that's not because of our backup solution, but because of not having a clear DR plan. Without a clear run book, we ran into several hiccups, as you can imagine. And we had to improvise and come up with a plan quickly on the fly to get the restores going. We ran into what comes first. I mean, is it the chicken or the egg? All systems were compromised, so they all had to be shut down. Without having a single domain controller, the Rubrik was unable to see the vCenter server, and without the vCenter server, we had nowhere to restore to. So that issue set us back a few hours, and once we had a solution, we came up with a solution, it was off to the races. Not only that, due to the nature of the incident, we started locking down our network further and removed any and all unnecessary writes. We did a network-wide password reset, including Kerberos accounts, and implemented EDR solution, which, as you can imagine, created a headache of its own and increased our recovery time. It was all happening all at the same time as we were restoring. Of course, every situation is unique, and having gone through what I went through, I can comfortably say, especially with the instant recovery, we could have been completely back up and running less than 8 to 12 hours at the most, with a clear DR plan in place.
Wow, less than 8 hours. I mean, that's very, very impressive. I mean, you hear about companies who take days or weeks to recover. That's fantastic that you believe you could have done it. And even basically, you're saying even with the absence of some of the run books, it still was only a matter of 1 or 2 days. So that's very, very impressive. I guess you can't always get away from the chicken and egg issues when you work at a poultry company, right? I don't know if that was an intentional joke there, but
that's true.
Well, talking about recovery time. So obviously, Rubrik, we have a lot of unique technology. Obviously, I think you were able to leverage some of that. But another thing that makes us particularly unique in the industry is that we have this ransomware recovery team as part of our customer support organization. I know you had the benefit of working with them. I'd love to hear just kind of your thoughts in that process, working with them, and was that helpful for you in your recovery process?
Actually, I wasn't even aware about the recovery team, but the tech support was exceptional. They were not only patient, but also engaged other engineers within Rubrik, and also were patient in working with other vendors and coming up with a solution to get the restore process moving forward. I was working continuously around the clock for days, and they were there every step of the way. And it was great to have them on the background, even as a sounding board, as I was working through some of these issues. And as you can imagine, it was an extremely stressful time, and I'm so thankful for the amazing support these guys provided during that time. Big kudos to them.
That's fantastic. I mean, obviously, we care about our customers and we want them to be as successful as possible. So, technology is not the only angle in terms of what we provide. And so I'm really, really glad you're able to take advantage of that as well. Well, just to kind of round out things here, maybe kind of a final question for you. Obviously, we titled today's session "The Edge of Ransomware." It's a little bit of a nod to a kind of a famous movie that came out from Hollywood. It talks about a hero who sort of relives a disaster over and over again, and is trying to teach everybody else some of the lessons that he's learned from that disaster. So in a way, I think you're the hero of our story today. So maybe just as a final question here, what are some of the lessons or some of the advice that you would have for all your peers in the industry? Obviously, everybody's thinking about ransomware. They're thinking about preparedness strategies. and response strategies. Would love to hear your thoughts, just as sort of final words of wisdom for the audience.
Sure. Before I get started, one thing that definitely helped was the support from the management, from a direct manager to all the way up the chain. This made a huge difference. Like in my case, I mean, no one was breathing down my neck. Well, it did help. I was working from home throughout this whole incident, but that was very helpful. Other than giving our management periodic updates, they trusted me to do the work and get the job done. So the trust that was put in me was so helpful. And minimize the stress of not having to answer or explain every little detail as we were going through the whole restore process and running into all these problems. The takeaway for management is to trust your team and please get out of the way, right? Having said that, there's a lot that we could do for someone who's just starting or who wanted to improve the network. Some of the things that we did and continue to improve. But before I even get started, keep in mind that each attack is different. Each incident will be different, so we need to constantly adapt. Having a clear business continuity plan, not just for IT, but for the entire organization is very important. It should be a living document that should be kept up to date and set up a 3-2-1 backup strategy at a minimum. And it should be monitored and updated regularly and test your backups. Don't set it and forget it. We need to constantly monitor them carefully. Set up a DR solution and test them thoroughly. After this incident, our DR solution is no longer domain joined and it's isolated. We re-architected our entire DR solution. And also make sure to patch all your devices regularly, lock down your network, roll out EDR solutions, and antivirus and anti-malware is a must. Email, spam filtering, anti-phishing, advanced threat protection. Basically monitor your email flow in and out. And MFA, multi-factor authentication, must be turned on if you haven't. Also, create separate accounts. This may sound very simple, but make sure to have one user as a regular user or to do your regular activity, but create a separate account for admin privileges only, and then use that account to access your servers. And remove all your admin groups and remove any unnecessary user accesses. Reset all your admin passwords, Kerberos accounts if an admin leaves. End user training is a must. Simulate ransomware attacks, testing, right? Segment your network so the damage can be minimized. I would say operating with a zero trust mentality is a good idea. I know it's not easy to set up and it's a lot of work, but that's something to keep in mind. Also, audit your logs for unusual network traffic and mitigate anything that's unnecessary. And monitor data import and export by scanning for malicious content. And also, no publicly accessible RDP servers. And lock down if you must to just a particular IP. If you have to put a server that's public facing, and cyber coverage is something that organizations should seriously consider. And I believe Rubrik even offers a ransomware recovery warranty for up to $5 million, which is very good, especially considering a higher premium cost for cyber coverages nowadays. So anyway, at the end, I'll end with this. No matter how much money we spend, there is no guarantee that we can be fully protected. So don't let your guard down. Continue to test your backup and have a living business continuity plan for your entire organization, including IT.
Thank you so much. I mean, that is just a fantastic set of best practices. I mean, ultimately, I think all of us are trying to help the community get over this threat. And that confidence, I think exactly as you said, it comes from the technology side, the process side, but it also comes from just folks like yourself, the heroes who've been through this process, sharing your experience and sharing your lessons learned. So thank you so much, Rama, for your time and for the privilege of being one of our customers, because it's really, really an honor to work with folks like you and to be able to serve businesses like yours. We hope the session was very, very useful for our whole audience today. To learn more, you can obviously come to Rubrik.com to get more information about some of our solutions. Other than that, best of luck in building great preparedness and response strategies for your organization as well. Thank you very much.